Welcome to Business Coaching Secrets with Karl Bryan. If you want to attract new high-end coaching clients, fill live events, and build a wildly profitable coaching practice where business owners pay, stay, and refer, you've come to the right place. In this podcast, Karl provides his keys to the kingdom for finding and signing high-paying clients and building the coaching business of your dreams. Here we go.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Business Coaching Secrets, where we give you the strategies, the mindsets, and the frameworks to building your own and dare I say, seven-figure coaching business. I am, of course, your host, the Road Dog, with none other than the man, the myth, the legend himself, who is, I believe, venturing in a new career in candlestick making, Karl Bryan. Shoots.
Yo, Shoots. How you doing, bud? What's going on, man?
I'm all right. I'm very excited that you are building an AI agent in candlestick making. It's very huge news. It rocked the candle industry to its core.
You heard it here first, Shoots.
I'm teasing, folks. If you're in the candlestick making business, you are safe. KB is sticking to business coaching and consulting. And he is, you know what? Actually, while we're at it, he's probably celebrating in his good friend Elon with his $1 trillion payday. Shoots. What are your thoughts on that, by the way?
Okay, so people online, you read and it's like, people who aren't quite, I'm going to call it in the know, they're making out like it's free money, right? Like Elon Musk, he solves big problems and he subsequently gets paid big money, right? And in order for Elon to earn that $1 trillion payday, Tesla's EBITDA has got to go to, I don't know what it is, but let's call it 400 billion, something crazy, right? In context, Tesla, like they're at 15, 16 billion now, right? So we're talking remarkable growth. And further context, like Apple, Microsoft, Google, like they play at like 130 billion. So, if he pulls it off, it's a massive stretch goal by any measure. And if he gets there, he earned it. And I say good luck to him and good luck to the Tesla shareholders. And, I'm rooting for him, assuming he stays a good steward for humanity along the way. I'm all for it. So I don't know. That's all I got to say about that, Shoots.
Well, speaking of in other news, I saw this great meme of Dave Ramsey in a hospital bed because he's obviously having a because of 50-year mortgages.
Yeah.
What 50-year mortgage, dude? For real? Like, what do you think of that?
50-year mortgages. Shoots. Look, the math says somebody's going to save $300 a month, but then cost them $500,000. Ultimately, if you go apples to apples. Look, the average person in government, we've said this before, right? The average person in government that makes fiscal policy decisions is like 70 years old with assets, stocks, real estate, etc. Right? So look at all fiscal policy over the last 30 years and then tell me who it benefits. And let me ruin the surprise for you. And if you've listened, to many of our podcasts, you know what's coming. It's like they all benefit 70-year-olds working towards retirement, right? So the goal is for real estate and the stock market to keep going up and up and up. And 50-year mortgages will help achieve that goal, right? Frankly, it's disgraceful. It kills. Why is it disgraceful? It kills young people's hopes and dreams, right? Don't even get me started on gambling apps and how every time I watch a football game, a hockey game, a baseball game, there's ads for gambling, but I'll leave that one there. Just look, people are ridiculously bad at common sense math and protecting their downside, right? Downside in this case would be like a bad retirement, a non-existent retirement, because you spent all your money paying off a 50-year mortgage because you didn't do the math before signing the papers, right? You just keep sending money. So the obvious answer is it's a pretty bad idea. But remember, so let me just go to the flip side. Like there was a time when somebody came up with a 30-year mortgage, and that was whatever number of years ago, and it sounded ridiculous at that time, right? It's worked out okay. So I want to say like owning a home is as much psychological as it is an investment, right? It's security for your family. Survival is like primal instinct to protect, you want to keep your family secure, right? Like I bought a house. And what did I do? I started making more money. It was more emotional than it was anything else. Why? Because I wanted to be able to look after my family just like you do and just like they do, right? So ultimately, if you were to ask me how did it work out, it paid for itself in spades, despite the fact that I paid some wild interest, and not to mention some hairy moments. I remember a $4,600 per month mortgage payment, and when it came due, there were some hairy moments. So if it help young families get into homes, and that's a current problem that does need to be solved, then I could potentially see the upside. What I think we really need to do, if that's the problem we're trying to solve, what we got to do is get the national debts under order, under control. But maybe that's a topic for another day. So look, if somebody's going to sign up for a 50-year loan, they're 30 years old, got a family, it's got to be variable, right? Why? So they can pay it off in 20 to 30 years rather than paying the extra $500,000 and, interest on the average house, right? How's that done? It's done by doubling principal payments without penalty, right? Like debt, I think is the more important question here, right? It's the most marketed program in the world. Student loans, car payments, mortgages. I think debt started out as like a noble intention until the banks and the government worked out how much money they could make by selling money and charging interest to the average family wanting to look rich and constantly upgrading their lifestyle, right? I talked about that last week, like movement, right? It's a bad thing for long-term wealth, right? So universities and colleges, they're master marketers, obviously. What do they sell? The illusion of scarcity. What did they do? They doubled their fees because kids and parents felt like they were spending monopoly money that the government gave them, right? I'd ask you, like, how is that working out for the average? Not very good. And by the way, the average family, like if you go to the average family, they keep 17 cents on every dollar, right? Where does the 83 cents go? Taxes, interest, fees, right? So you get a $2,000 mortgage. It's going to be like $1,500 interest, $500 principal per month, right? So what do? They pay $2,500 a month, double their principal payment, and you now pay the mortgage off in half the time. And what do? You save hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest. What do you do with that money? That becomes retirement money ultimately, provided there's not a ton of movement, right? As in continuing to buy, sell houses. And by the way, what I just said about doubling up the principal payment, like no banker, no mortgage broker is giving the average family that advice. And I just find that to be totally insane. But if a 50-year mortgage is used to get approved, and then the house is paid off quicker, totally digestible, I think we all know that that's probably not going to be the way that it's going to flesh out, and it is going to skyrocket the price of real estate. So on the surface, bad idea. But I do think there's another side to it, and everybody's got to make their own decision. But buying a home and providing a secure place for your family, generally speaking, is not a bad thing. So what I think often happens is they end up making significantly more money, like in my case, and I think that's a wonderful thing. So shoots. I don't know. That's my answer, but that's my answer.
No, like doesn't again with the whole 50-year thing, doesn't Dave Ramsey always say the borrower is the slave to the lender?
Yeah, I'm sure I've heard him say that, but I believe the borrower. Would you say the borrower is the slave to the lender? I would say absolutely. Like Dave Ramsey, good point. Like he gives some great advice, but he also gives some brutal guidance, right? He's also a billionaire. So learn from what he does more than what he says, right? He doesn't speak to entrepreneurs, to be clear. So what do you got to do? You got to use your critical thinking skills when listening to experts like him, rather than just buy into what they say to be truth or say to be best practices, right? What you believe, again, this is from last week, I believe, or the week before, but what you believe to be truth can hurt you wildly, right? Like we're speaking to business owners here. We're guiding business owners before they invest in real estate, stocks, Bitcoin, etc. Where should they be investing their money? Hiring a staff member for like $60,000 a year. So you're investing in people, you're investing in your business. and then expect, track it and expect to make an extra $300,000 of profit. How? By managing that individual properly, kicking them in the butt, getting them the training, giving them the guidance, and helping them become successful, right? That's a great investment for an entrepreneur, right? You're never going to hear that from Dave Ramsey, or at least I don't think. And then what does the entrepreneur say when you say, look, hire a staff member for 60 grand and then, make wild profit off of them, not off of them, through them, right? In a very ethical way. Well, they say, I will hire the person when I'm ready. Well, guess what? You'll never be ready. They're never going to be ready. What do we say to that? Reasons come first, answers come second. You can hire them. You could always let them go, right? Like invest $5,000 a month for 3 months. Okay, so that would be 15 grand. Put that into a new staff member and potentially solve the biggest problem. Get past your current bottleneck, right? Like that's a business coach hiring a lead generator, right? Person goes to networking events, picks up the phone for 8 hours a day to talk about how amazing you are and filling your events and guiding you. Maybe they're managing your Facebook ad account, right? See that as investing in your future. And maybe translation, a way to be thinking about that's delayed gratification, right? You're not going to pay somebody $5,000 a month for 3 months and then magically get this wild return. Although crazier things have happened, and that could absolutely happen, especially if you're sitting on a bunch of opportunity and very busy. But you got to use that frame of delayed verification, delayed gratification. Sorry. Similar advice to that is like everybody hates advertising until they need to sell their own car, right? You got to see it as investing when done right. But I think we can also agree that the ridiculous majority of advertising spend is not done properly. You ask me, why is that? How is that? What's the solution to that? They need to install an operating system like something like we've created, Jumpstart 12 specific areas. Before you advertise, show me your upsell, show me your downsell, show me your cross-sell, show me how you stand out from the competition with a market dominating position, show me how you're going to control costs as revenues go up, right? Eighth wonder of the world is that expenses have a way of meeting revenues. How are you going to raise your prices over time, etc., right? So look, translation, I just think to the 50-year mortgage, like it's a more complicated answer than just saying the 50-year mortgage is a good idea or a bad idea, right? And again, the end result, if it were to be approved, and it's not approved as we're talking here, real estate's going to go up in value. Okay, so if you see that happening and you see it get approved, remember, inflation is a tax from the rich to the poor, right? People with assets win and people without assets lose with inflation. Okay, again, solution. Where do you go? You got to invest in assets. You got to own assets as you get older. Anyway, Shades, that's my answer. But yeah, Dave Ramsey, that's it. Yeah, I think he's a brilliant man, built a brilliant business, but you got to be careful getting advice from somebody who's not speaking to you, right?
And great segue. You don't even realize how great that was a sweet ass segue right there, buds. We got a question here from one of our coaches. He's coaching a young 21-year-old entrepreneur. He's got a roofing company. They're getting close to 7 figures with good margins. And the question here is, if that was you, like, what advice would you give your young self? Like, how would you approach? There you go.
Boom. Okay, like that. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I got in my phone, I've got a note to my younger Sarah. So that's good. I would open that up. Give me a sec. So first of all, 21 years old, tell him not to gamble. No gambling apps on his phone. Please, 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 please. In 10 years' time, revisit that. And it's going to be a major problem. Okay, let me just see. Okay, so I've got a lot of notes here, but what I'm going to try and do is go more business related for us. Notes to my younger self as I'm building a roofing company or building a company and hitting 7 figures. No is a decision. Yes is a responsibility. I don't think that needs any further. You just take on more, take on more, take on more. How does that work out? They say that, multiple streams of income are like building a second business, right? A second business eats the first. If you were to start a second business, the way that Amazon and many of the greats have, or acquire competitors, you need the second business to feed the first, right? But no is a decision, yes is a responsibility. Be careful with those responsibilities as growing. And a 7-figure entrepreneur, do they have more opportunities or less opportunities? The answer is a ton more. Is that a good or a bad thing? And the answer is it could be a good thing, but it could also be the death nail. Decide what you want and work backwards from there. You ask me for an elementary example of that. I would say, okay, so that's like when you enroll in the triathlon. Put your name down and sign up for the half marathon. Maybe it's a bodybuilding competition, right? Well, you want to take that, because what happens? That's you operating from your goal instead of to your goal. And then you want to do the same thing with your business, right? You got to decide what it is that you want. So $5 million of profit per year. And then like the triathlon, it's got a date, which is very important. Create that date. And what should you do? What should he do? Look at it daily, right? Dogmatic with the goal and then flexible in the approach. Also reading, like I would be advising a 21-year-old. I don't need to go to his Facebook feed, his Instagram feed, TikTok, and know that he's getting a bunch of wild advice from what we'll call influencers. Read letters to shareholders versus the next great book, right? You want to understand crypto. Look, read the Bitcoin white paper. Read the Ethereum white paper. Learn the foundation of Bitcoin, which is blockchain. And what do you want to do? You just want to understand. Don't outsource this knowledge. What you want to do, what he wants to do, I think, is to get a foundational understanding of what those things are. Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, the greats of the great investing, they say don't invest in things that you don't understand. Do you need to have an intimate understanding? Not necessarily, but you should certainly have a foundational understanding, or I would dare say might be best to stay away. Here's one. Men are built to rise in status, right? So like in the past, that meant status amongst their tribe. Now, what's the problem? It's status amongst the world on social media. Like the kid's probably competing with Andrew Tate, right? What's that going to do? It can lead to an enormous amount of anxiety. And quite frankly, it's an unwinnable game. Tony Robbins was here speaking to us. He would say, be very, very careful with status. He refers to it as significance. Significance, somebody driving to significance generally has not the greatest life. I don't think that's something you want to be able to control, right? But again, men are built to raise their standing, raise in status. But when you were competing against the tribe, that was one thing. Now you're competing against everybody, a little bit ugly. Don't work towards an easy life. Work towards nothing bothering you. Okay, Charlie Munger would call this temperament in one word. Like the struggle never goes away. Despite how much money he makes, you make, if anything, problems compound with more money, right? So that famous movie, Phil Stutz, I think it's called Stutz, Jonah Hill, that's his counselor, his psychiatrist. And he says that 3 things you never get away from: pain, uncertainty, and constant work, right? Trying to solve for these things is a mug's game. It's one you're just not going to win, right? You want to play winnable games, not unwinnable games. When you make decisions, don't ask people close to you, ask people closest to your goal, right? Like if you want to have a great marriage, speak to somebody who's got a 50-year marriage, right? You want to become a multimillionaire, speak to somebody who's been a multimillionaire for a long period of time, right? Remember 2 things that are very rare: old and rich. Speak to somebody who is old and rich. Don't speak to the people closest to you. Speak to the people that are closest to your goal, that have achieved your goals, right? And 3 things to control: being too optimistic, your truths, and then protecting the downside. Risk, right? So risk, your truths, and being too optimistic. Those 3 things for a young man on the rise, obviously kicking some goals and doing well, that could be a bad thing. And also tell you that nothing about success feels like success when you're building it, right? You're going to feel behind. You're going to doubt yourself. You're going to want to quit, right? And whilst going through all that, like if your inner child is still alive and well, you've won, right? Like my dad, who's a fabulous mentor in many ways, both with, he'll tell you what, showing me what not to do in some cases, but certainly showing me what to do. He lived in Las Vegas for a long time. And we said he loved Vegas because it's a place where somebody never needed to grow up. Right. So my dad, he's 83 years old and he refers to himself as immature. Right. So I don't know, your inner child being alive and well. I think that is something as a 21-year-old building a 7-figure business. What can be the flip side of that? You mature too quickly. Right. Like my big brother committed suicide when I was 16 years old. And when I look back, one of the things that it did, like negatively, like obviously a brutal thing to go through while you're going through puberty, but it made me grow up quicker than ideal, right? And I would, your inner child, if you read my daily email, you might see that my inner child is alive and well. I'd also say, Shades, your greatest successes will come through other people, right? Like I've had my business partner for 17 years. We've literally never had a heated conversation. Most wonderful man of all time. Craig McLean, he's worked for me for 18 years. Danny Devine, she's my right arm. She's worked for me for 13 years and been like my right arm. She does my calendar, she does my email, she does everything. Chris Kling worked for us for 11 years. Tori Mathis, who is just pure gold. I think she's worked for us for I'm going to say 8 years. John Moore, who works for us now, he's been a client for 12 years, and now he works for us and works with us. Superstar. There's so many. I couldn't list them all, but your greatest successes will come through other people. Find great people, look after them, keep them around, build loyalty, etc. So motivation is great, but a successful life is about avoiding stupid. And I want you to capitalize, underline, and italicize stupid, right? Wrong life partner, wrong business, wrong friends, wrong mentor, wrong intentions, wrong actions, wrong place, wrong habits, etc. Because things are easy to start, but they're hard to finish. And ultimately, you're going to be remembered for what? For what you refuse to give up on, right? So again, finish things, follow through. New and next could be a really, really bad thing. I would also say holidays are actually coming up. If you want to slow, holidays, what do you say? Oh my God, they went so quick, right? So if you want to slow down time, the best way to do it is to give it your presence. Okay. Stay in the present moment. And I'll tell you that holiday season is around the corner. And what's going to happen? Divorce rates go up, fights go up, right? Like women leave men not because they lost their money, but because they lost their confidence. They lost their mojo. Confidence in business will get you into meetings and get you introductions more than anything like an MBA ever could, right? So, men, keep your confidence up. This young man, keep your confidence up. Stay masculine. And also during the holiday season, let me tell you this isn't so a little bit off topic, but be careful when you drive, right? Take a plane to see the family. If you're 40, your chances of dying are from two things at a high level that you can control, and that is choking and a car accident. Avoid choking, okay? So chew that turkey, but also avoid car accidents. Driving 10 hours across the country to see the family and then doing it again 48 hours later when you're tired, possibly hungover, could be a terrible idea. I'm going to suggest it's going to cost you a few more bucks, but book the flight. And by the way, so if it's unavoidable, okay, so let's say somebody's listening and look, we got to drive. This is the way it's going to be. Make a plan to make the trip safer with multiple drivers and regular stops, right? Despite the desire to get home as fast as possible. And the faster you drive, the faster you are to, die in the event you get into an accident. So getting there, when you do the math, right? Like you don't get there that much quicker by going 120 versus 100, right? There's going to be things that are going to slow you down along the way. Not a good idea. And maybe again, shoots, this is so off topic, but avoid ladders at all costs. What are dads doing? They jump up on the ladder and they put up the Christmas lights, etc. I'm going to suggest you should hire somebody to do that. Anyway, so hang on, back to these notes. Fall in love with learning, specifically history and psychology. Confidence combined with humility is a superpower. Stay confident, stay masculine. I would be saying to this young man, Real success in anything takes 5 years. So again, manage his expectation that all of a sudden he's going to go from $1 to $10 million in record time. And that may happen, but the reality is that I would be encouraging him to understand that this is a journey, not a destination, and to enjoy it. And that despite how talented he is and how hard he works, etc., he's got to play the long game. Needing nothing attracts everything. And maybe shoots. Financial wealth is monthly passive income above monthly burn. So I don't know if shoots that. I don't know if that. So there's some notes to my younger self. I don't know how that sounds, but that's what I got, brother.
There you go. Easy to say, hard to do, much like this next question. I'm getting good at this. We always say that raising prices is one of the quickest way to increase gross profit margins. What is the best way to raise your clients' prices? You know the resistance and the friction when it comes to this. Do you have any tips here for us?
I do. Okay. Think being innovative, right? Being different, offering something the competition doesn't, right? So create an apples to oranges kind of comparison. It's raising prices, the foundational piece of our Jumpstart 12 of the operating system that gets installed for any business. Like if the average business owner increases their prices by 10%, they'll likely increase their profits by 33, right? The increases effectively just go straight into their bank account, no added expenses, time, money, or resources, just pure profit, right? And by the way, the flip side of that is if you discount 10%, they discount 10%, and the average business, they need to sell 33% more to break even, right? The hardest thing to do in business, the most expensive thing to do in business is to get a new client. So I would translate that into very bad math. So for a coach to raise prices, right? I've said this many a times and got unbelievable feedback over the years, but a great way to do it is to scale in pricing, right? So if you're $3,000 a month, 36 grand a year, do it month 1, $997, month 2, $1,997, month 3, $2,997. Or 36, you get a $36,000 client with a $997 credit card investment, right? Or your 2,000 go 500, 1,000, 1,500, $2,000 ongoing, $24,000 client, $500 upfront, right? And by the way, month 1, go 97 if you need to. Go 97, 500, 1,500, $2,000 ongoing. You just got a $24,000 client for a $97 upfront fee, right? So this falls under something we've talked about a lot over the years, but that's buying ideal clients. If I had $100,000 and I was going to build a business, what would I do? How would I allocate the funds? I would buy ideal clients, right? And by the way, if you're going to do that, your job now is to be amazing so that they don't want to let you go. If you don't do a good job with your clients, guess what? You're going to have some inexpensive months on the front end and then have to replenish your client list shortly thereafter. But by the way, guess what? You'll get a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better, and then all of a sudden you'll be keeping them for a long time. But the bottom line is don't do your best, do what it takes, right? Okay, so raising prices for your clients, it's more complicated than just go in and say, okay, we're going to add 10%. And kind of so it should be. Like if you're going to increase prices on a recurring payment, in a perfect world, what I would do is go to 10% of their clients and just make sure that there's not going to be, a massive issue. What's a massive issue? That's them losing a bunch of clients, right? Seldom going to happen, I would dare say, but I would move forward cautiously. If it's a flat fee situation, think like McDonald's or Burger King or what have you, you can probably just do it straight across the board. And I might just say this, a better way to be thinking about this, a better question would be asking yourself this: how can we increase profits 100% and still keep clients happy, right? And notice I said profits. If your client has 10% margins, 10% net margins, and you decrease expenses by 11%, what just happened? And the answer is you just doubled their profitability, right? So as a frame to raise prices, you need to increase value, right? So you don't want them to be a commodity where people can just shop around. And then you go, okay, well, how do we do that? How do we get innovative? I would go to 3 areas. You got practical value, inherent value, and then social value. A token way of explaining this: add value over lower prices. As they say, price is what they pay and value is what you get, right? So value is a pretty average and boring kind of phrase. Break it down. How do you create it? How do you communicate it? How do you amplify it? How do you multiply it? I can tell you that attracting the right buyer is as important as anything. Okay. I've often said that starting a cleaning company, you could do a lot better than you probably think on the surface. But what do you need to do? I'd be going to affluent areas. Why am I going to affluent areas to sell my cleaning services apart from the obvious? They care more about trustworthiness and cleaning ability and your reliability, um, than they do the hourly rate, right? So the way to create a successful cleaning company is to attract affluent clients as much as it is, be a great cleaner. But of course, they should have a great cleaning business and they should provide a great product, right? So the bottom line: practical value, inherent value, social value. Practical, think pen, think paper, think computer. Like a laptop has a different practical value than a desktop, right? A pickup truck has got different value than a sedan, right? And then you've got inherent value. That's going to be like the reliability of the cleaner, the trustworthiness, their credibility. Like coming in through a referral, as an example, is going to be a huge value add. Social value, what's that? That's like Louis Vuitton selling you a purse that, and everybody knows you spent a lot of money on it. The same with the guy driving the Ferrari, and the same with the guy wearing the Rolex, right? Like having an elevator in your house is going to make it a lot more attractive to the right buyer, the right renter, than, like living in the right neighborhood. The cheapest house in the most expensive street is like a good frame to be thinking about if you're looking at buying a house for your family, like we talked about earlier, right? And I don't know, I'd encourage you to think those things through as you're helping your clients. Look at it in different ways. Um, and from a frame of creating value, right? Increasing prices is the frame, but really creating value is the way you get there organically, comfortably, and in a meaningful way, right? That's part of why we get our coaches and encourage them to do events, right? They don't all do them, but we certainly encourage it, and it brings a compounding effect and authority, maybe a bit of celebrity status if they're good at it. They get more referrals, they get more joint ventures, they can charge higher prices, and very importantly, higher retention. Like when I was coaching, I would not coach somebody who didn't see me speak at a live event. Why was that? Because my retention was significantly higher, right? So frame, I would say jump, and I wanted them to say how high as opposed to why, right? No doubt you get the idea. It's just like authority over your client. I found that when they saw me speak at a local live event, the retention was off the charts versus the folks that, were kind of cold called. And again, it's a great way to increase the gross profit margin of your clients, and they do so happily. But the problem, Shoots, is most coaches know it, but then they don't do it, right? It's the same with group coaching. You increase the perceived value of your one-to-one. That's one of the most important reasons why you want to do group coaching, right? It's got like a compounding effect. And it's got a compounding effect when you start doing group. Mistake the coaches make is they do one-to-one, burn out a little bit, and then they go, I'm never doing one-to-one anymore. I'm only doing group. I'm like, that's a horrible decision. Why? If you really want to increase your fees and you really want to get, like a $60,000 coaching client off of a text message, it will come from a group coaching client buying up, somebody who wants more of your time and attention. So Shoots, bottom line, we want to be raising prices is one thing, but the higher level frame is that we want to be innovative and we want to be adding value. And that's the best way to create really profitable clients. And if you broke that down and just took value, you took innovation, you broke it down into 3 areas. You got practical value, you got inherent value, you got social value. And maybe Shoots, before I throw it back to you, like the higher level question here is about profit margins, right? So the lightweights are just going to say raise your prices. But if you want to be the best business coach you can be, you really want to go to the next level. You want your clients to go to the next level. You want to be changing the game. You want to be innovative. You want to be adding value with and for them so that their clients don't see them apples to apples. It becomes an apples to oranges comparison. So, you keep them away from being a commodity. Anyway, Shoot, so raising prices, perfect way to put more money into your client's bank account and effectively cover your fees in like record time. But I think that what I'm trying to bring across here is that It shouldn't just be seen as like raising prices 10%. A little bit more goes into it, a little bit more thought, etc. So that's my answer, Shoots. What do you think?
All I heard is don't be a lightweight. Boom. There you go. Hey, speaking of where we have been a lightweight, how? How could we have missed our pure gold moment of Zen for the last couple of weeks? What is happening to the world? You must be just bursting on the inside, just ready to explode Zen all over the place. Shoots, hit me with it. Let's go. The people are dying. It's the requests just keep coming. Let's go. Moment of Zen.
That's moment of Zen, Shoots. I tell you, well, look, yesterday, it was a year ago yesterday that I lost one of my best buds, Tazzy, to cancer. 52 years old, 2 kids, amazing wife, Alicia, his best mate, Johnny Moe, doing it hard. So anyway, so possibly appropriate. So okay, here's what I just got back from Orlando and took the family, went to Universal Studios, etc. Rode 41 roller coasters with my daughter. Felt like I had a concussion. It was crazy, crazy, crazy. But here's what we did. So we did Mickey points, right? So it comes back to, how do you want your house to feel? All right. Said that a while ago on the podcast, and I got to tell you, it stuck with me and I just love everything about it. So we went on a, family holiday. And one of the things I was like, hey, Carl, how do you want this vacation not to go, but how do you want it to feel? So what we did is we created Mickey points, and simply put, when you did something good that I called it the vibe, right? The vibe of the holiday. So when you did something to add to the vibe of the holiday, you got a Mickey point. But when you did something that took away from the vibe of the holiday, you lost a Mickey point, right? And I got to tell you, we had one of the best family holidays of all time. It was just crazy. And it's just, so how do you want your house to feel, right? How do you want your business to feel? How do you want your coaching client relationships to feel? And I think there's a little bit of magic in that. And then I went, by the way, so I went from Orlando. I went to go see my dad. My dad lives in Mexico. I went to go see him. And again, I didn't share this with my dad. I wasn't doing Mickey points with my dad, right? He would have thought that's crazy lame. That's one of the things, I was just like, how do I want this to feel? Right. And I just kept the real, you know, good vibe in and around. And my dad and I always have a great time. He's the most easygoing guy of all time. But anyway, so how do you want your house to feel is the question. When you're setting goals, like if it doesn't scare you, it's not going to grow you. Like if you don't feel lost, I can tell you now, you're not going to be accelerating, right? If you're not uncomfortable, you're probably not thinking big enough. And a popular saying is that it's easier to see people's mistakes than your own, right? Kind of translation, it's harder to unlearn something than it is to learn something. Like, what if your assumptions and beliefs are crushing your forward progress, right? Like you see this in the NFL more and more, where teams go for it on 4th down more than ever before, right? Something had to be unlearned. And what was that? It said it's 4th and 2. You just automatically punted. And that was the way it was for like 50 years, right? Or like, Toronto, they lost the World Series not long ago. I saw a somewhat heartbreaking interview afterwards. It was their closer came in, like they had the game won. They were, had a lead in the 9th inning. They bring in their closer, and his job is obviously just to close it down. Well, somebody hit a home run off of them, and next thing you know, they're going into extra innings. They interviewed him, and he goes, what did he say? He said, like, I cost everybody in here a ring, right? And then they interviewed Ernie Clement like straight afterwards, which just seems like the best guy ever. And he goes, I'd go to war with Jeff Hoffman any day, right? Just pure class. And I think, vibe, it speaks to the culture in the room and why they managed to overachieve at such a high level. I would dare say that you probably agree these guys are all multimillionaires and whatnot. Like, is that the vibe in most of the, the dugouts, the locker rooms, etc. And then I'd parlay that. So there's Mookie Betts, right? He's one of the studs of the Dodgers who ultimately beat the Jays in the, in Game 7. They won the World Series. It was in the 9th inning, right? He was understandably very nervous. And what he said in the interview is that they interviewed him and he said something like, "Be nasty mook," right? and everything was on the line. And that's what he was saying to himself. Why was he saying that? Because think about it. It's the ninth inning. You're up to bat. No doubt timidness would be something you could very naturally and organically feel, right? Well, he wanted to balance that with be nasty mook, right? Apparently it worked, by the way. But it's just, I think it's kind of being proactive versus reactive. And by the way, the flip side of that, Shoots, you're not going to like this possibly, but, Kiner Falefa, I believe that's his last name. So he's playing for the Jays, and he's on third base in the ninth with the bases loaded and one out. Okay, translation: any hit was going to be a force play at home, right? No need to slide. Why? Because sliding slows you down. And running through the bases is going to be quicker, right? What did he do? He slid for no reason, and he forgot to unlearn, right? He also had a weak lead off of third base, right? So like the frame is that you take the same number of steps off of the base as in this instance, the third baseman. So if the third baseman is 3 steps away from third, you take a 3-step lead to be, and that's kind of on the conservative side, right? Well, he was playing it conservative, and I would say that he had a 2-step lead. The third baseman was 3 steps off. And again, I'll translate that into the opposite of, be nasty mook. He was trying not to lose versus trying to win, so that he's worried about getting picked off. And by the way, so guess what happened? Somebody hit the ball, he ran home, and ultimately he got called out by an inch. So Shoots, what am I saying, right? When your brain is primed to avoid loss, feel fear, and be cautious. A reminder of be nasty mook, be nasty road dog, be nasty KB. I think that would have helped versus a framework of being really cautious and don't get picked off, right? What does Jeff Bezos say? He says step by step ferociously, right? Or Jensen Huang from NVIDIA. He says we're always 30 days away from going out of business. They got a $5 trillion company at this point, and the framework is that 30 days of going out of business. So high stress situations, which, let's face it, business is high stress situation. Your coaching business is a high stress situation. Your live event, depending upon how many of them you've done, is probably a high stress situation for you. It's going to be easy for your brain to hit tilt. Like the old school arcade game, and you need to override it the way Michael Jordan always did, Kobe always did, and obviously Mookie Betts did. Controlled aggression, step by step, ferociously in business, step by step, ferociously with your coaching business, step by step, ferociously with your clients, step by step, ferociously if you're the young man, 21 years old, and building a roofing company that you see going to the stars. But the only way you're going to get that is to unlearn in many ways. And Shoots, I just want to finish that off. Full respect to all those guys. We're there watching on TV, and the keyboard warriors are sending nasty messages, especially to the guy that was on third base, who didn't come through, right? Failure sucks, but it's also where all the growth is, being in the arena, being in the competition, right? Michael Jordan didn't lose to Isaiah and the Pistons. He doesn't go on to become a billionaire, and he certainly doesn't go on to win all those championships. Failure is a prerequisite for your success. Your first event being a failure is a prerequisite for you to build many successful ones in the future, right? So these guys were in the arena daring greatly with the weight of their countries, in this instance, on their shoulders, and full respect to those young men. They gave it a red hot go. The Dodgers won, the Jays lost, but you know what? Wow, anybody who followed that series will tell you that, holy smokes, it was unbelievable. And maybe Shoots, before I don't know how I'm doing on Zen. This is a very Zen Shoots, as per usual, but that's okay. One thing I do want to say is stopping your worst activity. Okay, so just dumb comments on Facebook and trolling players in the instance of these keyboard cowboys. You're going to get further by stopping your worst activity than you are get further starting your best, right? So the question, the translation, what's your worst activity, right? You've got to control that, and you're going to have a net positive experience in a meaningful way. Stop your client's worst activity, and you're going to help them have a net positive experience that that's like punting on 4th and 2. It's a little different than the way they might currently be thinking, the way you might currently be thinking. It's more new and next, and it's more the next activity, the next activity, the next activity. And I understand that. I get that. And that can also have a net positive for sure. But I'd be going to your worst activity and parlaying that into something kick butt. Anyway, Shoots, that's my thoughts. A little bit of baseball trivia for you.
Well, there you go, Shoots. A little bit of the baseball. It's almost like, it's funny when you're just like between two countries. I'm pretty sure more than half the United States is definitely not cheering for the Dodgers. It seemed like the high favorite team versus Moneyball, and everybody wanted Moneyball to win. You know what I mean? Like pretty wild stuff. So, anyways, folks, there you go. It is difficult to unlearn. That is the biggest takeaway for me this week. And thanks for tuning into another episode of Business Coaching Secrets. Remember, if you're not on the inside getting access to the pre-show, or you aren't getting Karl's daily emails, or you just want more information on how to build, grow, and scale your coaching company, do yourself a favor. Visit focus.com and subscribe today. And also, if you enjoyed the podcast, please like and subscribe, and also share with a fellow coach. Again, we're trying to make our impact across the greater coaching community. And while you're at it, leave us a review. And that is it for another week. We will see you in the next episode. And remember, folks, progress equals happiness. Take care, everybody.
Karl Bryan built Profit Acceleration Software 2.0. So as a business coach, you'll never again have to worry about working with business owners that can't afford your high-end coaching fees. Check us out at focused.com.